with the resurgence of COVID cases. After 3 years of tough measures, China had to finally shift its stance and open up the economy. Remember that slew of protests in November after people were sick of being in strict lockdowns for 3 years. But the results seem to be disastrous, to say the least. Some estimates are that the magnitude of the issue will only grow. But at the moment, it seems like China doesn't care about the consequences as it looks to get its economy firing on all cylinders. The other big fear is that will we really know the numbers? There are various reports of the kind of infections, mass infections going on in China right now, but the government is unlikely to put in any big numbers that you can really rely on. That seems to be the big concern for global markets at this time. It's also a concern because any kind of wide-scale infection could lead to the next mutation of the virus coming in. This is something the US State Department has also talked about today. Now, Jan Lambregts, Global Head of Financial Markets Research at Rabobank, is with me on the show. I'm also speaking with Giridhar Babu, epidemiologist at PHFI Bangalore. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us. Jan, let me begin by getting your take on how big the Chinese concern is at this point.
Yeah, I think it should be considerable, and so should ours be. Essentially, they're now at where we were in other parts of the world a good while ago. So they have to now flatten the curve. They're hoping that the Omicron variant will remain the dominant one, that they can somehow get through this after zero COVID has been pushed aside because it simply wasn't working anymore. And China is ill-prepared. It doesn't have much critical care capacity. It has low vaccination rates amongst the very elderly, all of which can't be very quickly or easily fixed. Now it seems to have pushed aside any sort of measures there and just wait and see what happens. That has a real impact. What the markets are looking at from a distance, not sitting in China, is that they think, okay, well, we're also hearing about stimulus. We're hearing 5% growth target next year. This is China coming back, etc. It'll be inflationary of the back, which is something we don't want. But having the demand there could be an offsetting factor for recessions elsewhere. But that's a very narrow view when the near term here is COVID is having really that country in its grip.
Mr. Babu, I want to understand what we are seeing. Are we seeing Omicron play out in China a year after India? Pretty much.
Yeah.
This is where we were January of 2022. Is that what we're seeing play out in China? And is the concern that there could be a new mutation?
Yeah, absolutely. So as of now, this is the Omicron variant, which is in circulation in most part of the world. Therefore, the one which will probably spread faster in China will be the Omicron variant. However, the more the people are infected, the higher is the circulation. There are more opportunities for generation of newer variants. So I should be watching out very carefully on what happens in China, because the last time when the world ignored China, it did not turn out to be well. So the data from China doesn't seem to be very robust, in the sense that we don't know what the actual number of cases are, what the rate of hospitalization is, and the genomic sequencing of the newer variants. So coupled with all of this, we should be in a position to know whether there are new variants developing there. But currently, the surge seems to be mostly due to Omicron variant.
Now, Jan, if I can just try and understand why the world is concerned, because this seems like a double-edged sword. When China was in very sharp lockdown, there were protests, etc. But there was a concern that one of the largest economies in the world was slowing down, was not firing on all cylinders. Now you have a surge of infections. If they move the other way, they'll go back to lockdowns. Either way, it seems like a lose-lose situation.
It is a very tough situation for the rest of the world. You're absolutely correct. See, if China somehow conquers this through also stimulus measures and comes through this, then the additional demand, well, welcome, like I said, from a growth offsetting perspective, while the rest of the world's heading for slowdown recession. At the same time, it's inflationary, which is exactly what we don't want. At the same time, the situation we've been in this year is that supply disruptions emanating from China, which is still very important, of course, in that global supply chain, the disruptions because of zero COVID strategies, they've been meaningful and they've added to inflation as well. So in both scenarios, we got this still upwards effect on inflation. If we had stuck with zero COVID, which clearly isn't the case now in China, you would have had inflationary impact from supply chain disruptions. And now you're having immediate near-term supply chain disruptions from COVID ripping around. And at the same time, the prospect that if China does come back, inflationary impact from that as well. But hopefully better supply chains at least.
If we look at the same kind of trajectory, Mr. Babu, will we see, because Omicron spreads very quickly but had lower fatalities, will we see the same trajectory from China? And a big question which is being asked today, especially in India, is that should we start looking at travel restrictions from China?
Yeah, so there are two aspects here, Tamanna. One is within China, the situation is not same as other countries. Other countries had higher vaccination rates with effective vaccine, of which the effectiveness ranged between 85 to 95%. And therefore, we knew what will be the susceptibility levels with Omicron surging on. But in China, I'm not really confident of the effectiveness of the indigenous vaccines. The booster coverage is far lower, especially in the elderly. Therefore, the effects of Omicron in China will not be same as what we saw, at least in India, to compare with. That's one aspect. The second aspect, travel restrictions do not actually mean anything at this stage from China, mostly because the virus, whatever the circulation is mostly Omicron, and India and other countries have witnessed Omicron variants. But we should be looking out for any outbreaks and then make sure that the genomic sequencing is done. The Government of India has already issued a letter where genomic sequencing has been stepped up in all the states. So as we move forward, we need to track any cluster and then identify any newer genetic variation that we see compared to the earlier Omicron. That's the way forward. Restriction is not the way forward.
Also, Mr. Babu, and this is a follow-up to you, are we going to get real-time transparent information from China? Everything is in the realm of speculation and reports that are leaking through. No one officially knows what's happening.
I wish I could answer that question, Tamanna. Probably you would know better than me, because unless WHO, Chinese CDC, and other governments work together, we will never know what's happening. Currently, they've stopped testing asymptomatics. That's not a good sign. I mean, as we move forward, we should really have reliable numbers in terms of cases and hospitalization. If we don't have it, then we are not comparing the like with like.
Okay, let me just take a quick, take from Jan as well. The concerns which the US State Department also talked about, impact on major economies around the world, impact on the global economy, which is already looking not so great, unfortunately, going into 2023. Is there now, at this point, an overestimation of the Chinese impact, or is there actual concern?
I think there's actually concern. I mean, we come here also at the cusp of what is a tough spot. We have had a year in which central banks across the world have been hiking interest rates quite substantially. They are manufacturing quite the slowdown, in some cases recession, like first half of next year in the Eurozone, potentially second half going into 2024. Also in the US, something that skirts on the side of a recession, possibly a mild recession. Now, that is combining with the COVID impact, first of zero COVID strategy, and now this uncontrolled letting go. Now I can see where they're concerned. And on top of that, of course, the latest comments today were really about what if a variant were to appear. And I can't, it's not my expertise to put a number on that, but I can see where the world will be concerned because we've just come out of 3 years of issues with that. This year looks like we have put it in the rearview mirror, but have we really when this is happening?
Just come back to you, Babu, on that, Ms. Babu. The theory seems to be where there are a large number of infections, even if right now it's the same Omicron, it could give rise to a new mutation. That's the underlying question mark and concern. How valid is that concern?
Now, we have seen time and again that whenever there are areas of circulation, rapid circulation has led to some development of newer variants. But the rate of development of new variants in COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2, is not same as or not fast as influenza because of reasons known to us by now. Therefore, the rate of development of newer variations or variants might be slower, but then it is real. We are not speculating simply that there will be newer variants. There will be newer. The question is only in terms of when. It's not a question of whether there will be a variant or not. So the best way forward is to make sure that we are detecting all the clusters and subject these cases for genomic sequencing. That's the only way of knowing it, or else it will be mere speculation at this stage.
So we have to wait and watch. They have to be more careful across the world. And of course, from the Indian perspective, we've already stepped up our guard. Thank you so much. What